can't come between us. Still I know you just don't care. And I said, what about breakfast at Tiffany's?
All right, everybody. Just the people signing in here for our lunch and learn here on SolidWorks BOMs here. I hope that you guys are ready to dig into to this SolidWorks tool here. It's an interesting topic in a way, because there's a lot in it and you can do a lot of things. And I know that a lot of our users are doing a lot of things. So it's kind of an interesting topic. My idea is to maybe show, if you're a new user, you will kind of like get an idea about what you can do with the BOMs. If you are an experienced user, I hope that I possibly can show you some tips and tricks and stuff like that. But this is one of these CAD Dimensions lunch and learns where we're hoping that we can kind of like teach you show you a couple of tips and tricks on different things in SolidWorks, kind of like trying to be part of making you guys better and understanding and using the tool better. So I have this little PowerPoint here. This is not 800 slides. It's more to keep me on track. I think I use these. So BOMs, really, they're pretty easy to work with. So let me just quickly kind of like cover what we got when we were talking about that. So in SolidWorks here, I have this assembly. It's not a big assembly. Probably like 100, 200 components or something like that of this bench grinder here. And I also do have a drawing of this, right? Because that's where we generally see these bills of materials. On this, just to run through this drawing quick, I got different sheets. You can add sheets down here on the little button here. So you will see that, and I'm a fan of this on assemblies, that you kind of like making assembly drawings. Some are required, some people choose. If you look here at sheet number 2, you will see that that we have like a long bill of material. If you go to sheet number 3, something's a little more breaking out, no bill of material. We got another breakout here, another view with another kind of bill of material. So you can use bill of materials here. Now on sheet number 5, I do not have anything on it. This is where we're going to play around for the next probably half an hour or so on this bill of materials here. And I am going to compete with the lawnmower outside my office here. So if you hear some noise in the background, it's just somebody cutting the grass. So the first thing we do is normally we're setting in a view, because one of the things that we deal with in with bill of materials is that it's attached to a view. It has to, right? So that's a neat thing about SolidWorks drawings, that when you have a drawing of a part, where the part changes, the drawing updates, and that's kind of like how the same thing it is with a bill of material, is that it's associated to a drawing view. Now I'm going to drag in this this isometric view here on my screen here, and many times what I do is I kind of like using, the bill of material is kind of like sitting in its own sheet, maybe with a preview of our parts. So we might go in here over here and change it to a shaded mode, right? So it looks a little bit sharp. I don't know if you guys do this. I do this quite a bit with a view like this. You can actually go up here to the 3D drawing view, and now you can actually kind of like rotate it around. So if this is kind of like a bill of material view, you can actually go in here and set that view, kind of like maybe look a little bit more, cover-like. Now the bill of materials, there's of course 8 different ways that you can insert them. One is to go up to insert and go down to tables, and there you will find the bill of materials, where you find all the other bill of materials in here. Actually, I'm not really going to cover the Excel-based bill of material. I'm not a big fan of that. There was in previous version of SolidWorks, that was the only way you could insert a bill of material, were with Excel-based materials. You can still do it. A lot of people do it by legacy. But I prefer to use the SolidWorks bill of material, because that is actually what they're normally working on and stuff like that. But you have to have pre-selected a view and then select the bill of material. Now when you do that, you get a lot of different options over here. And I'm going to try to make this webinar kind of like follow a path from simple to getting more complex. But that means that we do have to jump a little bit around over in this board over here. So I'm going to just skip over this first couple of ones and jump down to the type of bill of material we can show. So we can show a top level only. And really, if I just place this on the table here, place that right here, what we get is we get top level. What means that we have a motor assembly, we got a base assembly, a guard assembly, there's a left and a right, we got a grinding wheel assembly. So it's kind of like just showing, kind of like it lists the parts and sub-assemblies, but not the sub-assembly kind of like components. To get to into the menu that we had over to the left in the program manager just before, I'm just going to click on this corner up here and it comes back. You've seen it changed a little bit because, like I said, there's a lot of different things in here. But the next one down here is parts only. So now what it does is it's really just going in and say, to the heck with anything that is assembly level, now I'm just going to show all the parts. And the third one down is one of my favorites. It's actually going indented. What that means is that if you go in here, it will show the first assembly, and then it would actually show the different ones that is showing up in here. And I can actually see that one of my options, this should be quantity over here. This is when you are goofing around with preparing for one of these webinars, I guess. That's something we're supposed to come back into later on. Let me just turn that off. And let me delete this table. And yep, that is for later, friends. Let me just insert another table here. Bill of material. And if we go in and show the indented here, that's better. I was looking for that one to show quantity. That's what you normally see. You will see here in the indented that we have the main assembly, and then we have all the small parts. Now, I'm a favor, under the indented, you can actually also do detail numbering. And then it will show the motor assembly, and then it becomes 1.1, 1.2, and if you look at the next sub-assembly, it will be 2.1, stuff like that. So that is kind of like a neat way to work with this. I'm just going to jump back to the top level again just to make it a little bit smaller here. And you will actually see that I have some different configurations also showing up when I go back to that. Configurations I'm going to come back to a little bit later in here. So this is the one we had the top level before. Now at any time when you select it here, the top level, as you can see, things can move around on you. I can grab the corner and I can kind of like, I can fit things back here. But that actually brings into a good point what we just saw happening to my table, that my table moved, kind of like depending on how you're switching stuff around. So this is maybe something for some of the people who don't use or who are using bill of materials a lot. Here's a little trick. If I can take columns, right, and we can change each individual column up here. Did you know that if you change a column to a certain size and you hold down Shift and you let go, everything can change back to that size? So that's maybe be one of these small tricks. So you can change them individually, or you can grab, move back, hold down Shift, and let go of your left mouse button, and everything sorts back. So that's one of those small tricks. But generally speaking, when we're inserting a view or inserting a bill of material, we go to Insert, Tables, Bill of Materials. If you don't have pre-selected a view, it's going to yell for a view, and then we can select the view. And generally over here, that's the basics that we kind of like choosing. Is this just a top level? We just want to show all the assemblies, or is this parts only, or do we actually want to show kind of like that indented view? Now, another thing that was made available a few years ago was, if we go back to the assembly, is that we can actually also on the assembly showing a bill of material. So let me go back in here and do the same thing. So you go to Insert, you find Tables, Bill of Materials, and again we can show it in different levels in here. And if I go in and I insert here and show this bill of material, we can show it on the assembly level. Now, one of my favorite reasons for using bill of materials on the actual assembly is if I, for example, publish this to an e-drawing. So you maybe send this to somebody else in your organization who's just having e-drawing, don't have SolidWorks. It's actually kind of nice when you open up that e-drawing that bill of material is available there. Of course, in e-drawings we can also, show exploded views and stuff like that. And if you have the professional package of e-drawings, you can also give them allowed to measure and do markups. That, by the way, markups in e-drawings can now, in 2013, be brought back into your drawings if you forgot that from the rollout. So you can actually insert these on the assembly level. And if you have one on the assembly level, if we jump back into our drawing here, I deleted that bill of material that was there, and I now go to create a bill of material. I actually now get an option in here to copy the existing one that we have over on our assembly, and they can be linked. So now I could actually insert that exact same bill of material that I have over on my assembly, and if I change anything on this one, guess what? Then it also is going to change over on our drawing. So I think that this is that could be a pretty powerful thing, right? Maybe just want to insert it one place and not the other. So I think that this bill of materials in here, they are pretty powerful just to quickly get in there. Now, just to kind of like run through a couple of more options. This time I'm going to insert the bill of material by clicking on the view, right click, and go to tables and bill of material. So we can show it top levels. There is some configuration things. We're going to come back to that. Also be aware of that there is keep missing items in here. So this is more for companies that have different standards. Some companies has a standard that if you have a bill of material and you delete a component out of that bill of material, it still needs to be shown on the bill of material. So now I got this one, and you can then get it stroken out, or whatever you call it, like marked, crossed off. So that's another option that's in here. That's probably more depending on how your company is set up. We can also control things like item numbers. So should you start with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Do we want to start with 5 and go every other? How everybody wants things a little bit different. And then also, of course, you can choose how it's gonna follow the assembly order. But actually, this one down here is pretty powerful too. You can actually lock the design table and the bill of materials, kind of like say stop. So pretty neat, I think, to quickly get some things created here for that kind of stuff. So really fast and easy to get a bill of material on there. If you're just looking for, going in, get a bill of material, that's really all you really need to do to that point. But many of you guys need to go a little bit deeper, right? There's more things that need to come on the bill of material. Many times what happens is that when you put a bill of material on the drawing, then the shop manager or the owner or somebody comes and says, ooh, how about we can put more stuff on it? So we can, of course, do more with the bill of materials than just put them on and go with the default amount here. So first of all, it can be moved around like this, and I showed before too that you can grab the corner down here. You can kind of like adjust the different things. You can also go over here, up here to the top, and actually create a column, and you can slide it over. Anybody who's taking the census class have kind of like seen that happening also doing there, that you can kind of like control those different things. We can also right-click here, and if we right-click up here, we actually get a lot of more options. One of the ones is we can actually insert columns to the right or to the left. So in this case here, I'm going to set one to the right, and as soon as I do that, I actually jumps into custom properties. But if you just start from the top and working our way down, this is actually where we see a couple of them in here, right? Like the item numbers that we have over to the top, and also like something like part numbers that in my case here is the file names in here. But what I like to use is custom properties. Now, custom properties is what we also call metadata in SolidWorks. And you can do a lot with that. And some of you guys use it a lot. Some people maybe don't use it too much. But it's really a way for you to capture a lot of data around your parts. That could be, you know, who made it. It could be descriptions about the different, what it's used for, all different kinds of things. Now, if I go in and look here, we will actually see that there is, for my part in here, my assembly, I actually have a column set for purchase. So on my bill of material here, I could actually show a purchase column that would show me what if I need to go out and purchase certain items, or if I don't need to purchase certain items. So for example, if we look at the grinding wheel that we see right in here, this might be a purchased item that I need to purchase. So how does this really work with getting this kind of stuff into the custom properties? Well, if I already have one set up for my base here, I'm just going to scroll down to my window. This is the lazy way to get to your sub-assembly, right? Click here, and you can actually open up the sub-assembly from right here. It's going to open up my sub-assembly grinding wheel here. And custom properties is hidden right underneath files properties. Okay, and this is the custom properties field that we see for my part here. By the way, you can fill these out with the property tab builder. If you're not familiar with that one actually can be set up, and you will see that in the end of the slide. That's my email on that list. But the custom properties is something you can completely customize inside of SolidWorks, where when you start your model out, you could fill all this information out, and it would populate it into your properties in your part or in your assembly here. Just getting sidetracked. In here in the properties, by the way, notice that for this grinding wheel assembly, my description field is empty. I just want you to note that. But for the purchase item, what I'm going to do is, well, you can actually control what is defaulted inside of this custom property tab here. But if you don't see the thing that you are looking for, you can actually just type it in. So in my case here, it was purchase. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to write yes. That means that I, for a property name called purchase, am now saying that that value is yes, right? What this means is that when I go back to my drawing and we go up and look at my my purchase item, I have now populated that back in to the bill of material. So that's pretty cool, right? So as you're creating your parts or bringing in, you know, creating your assemblies, sub-assemblies and stuff like that, if you utilize custom properties, you can actually have some of that information showing up by default. So actually I talked about before the description field when we looked at my sub-assembly, that was empty, and we see that that shows empty here too. Again, just to, on a little side note here, right, if we go back into the properties, that field is empty there. How many of you guys actually use the description? You know that it's actually right under the save as, saved copy, that there's actually a description field when you're saving your parts and your assemblies out, and you could actually write down in here a quick description of what this is. But what you did not know is that when you throw in a bill of material, many times this is what happens. We have a description field that is empty, and we're like, dang it. Well, if you didn't know, you can actually double click in here, and it's asking me if I want to keep or break the link. I'm going to say keep it. You can actually type something in here. And if I type something in here, then it actually goes the way back into our property on our file. So it actually goes both ways. So now you will see that that got put in there. And of course, the SolidWorks is that cool that if I go and say save as again, it has actually also been populated into my description. If you didn't know that, that's actually maybe a pretty cool way to deal with that kind of stuff, that we can actually populate things back when you get to that. Another thing that I have seen a lot of customers use is, so over in the part number over here, right now it's showing my file names. But many times what people have is actually some kind of a part number that they are using, or customer numbers is being used, and that kind of stuff. And that's actually where, again, you could create a custom property in your sub-assemblies or as parts, and use this column to display that, instead of displaying just these part numbers, how you're saving your files, but maybe don't make any sense for other people looking at the bill of material. So the way you start from scratch on this is, if we go into the custom properties, and I'm going to create my own here, my part number. I'm jumping all over the caps lock things here. And I'm going to call this here maybe SH10 for my part number. And now when I go back to my drawing, if I go over here and I double click on this one, and again go back to my custom properties, that will actually be available. And now you will see that it have this S10 in here. So you could have done that for all your different parts, and really in this way here, it's actually being customized, right? You can work with this so it shows up really the way you want that. So that goes with another thing, and that is really that when you are inside and working with bill of material, if this is something you're doing fairly often, it's okay to be lazy when you're working with CAD and CAM. We don't want to do these kind of setups all the time, right? I mean, that gets a little bit intuitive that we have to do this all the time. What you can do is you can actually right-click and say Save As. And in my case here, I'm saving this out as a template, as a BOM template. And I'm going to call this my BOM template. And I'm saving this out to my desktop. What you will see now is that when I go in here and I delete this BOM, you see this is our customized one that I just created. When I delete it and I go to insert a new one, this time I'm going to go to the S key. I've actually placed my bill of material right on the S key. You will see that it sees that as my template. And when I place it, look at that. It remembered all those different places. I can move on. I can even go further and maybe say I want to select to attach it to an anchor point. And in my case here, the anchor point is up in the upper right left corner. But you can actually change that. That actually comes out of your sheet format. So if you right-click out here and go into Edit Sheet Format, and you maybe click over on this corner, you can right-click and say you want to set that for your anchor point of bill of material. And now when I insert my anchor point now, it will be snapping to that. So then maybe I want to move it over to actually the opposite corner there. And again, when you have gotten these things fitted the way you want, now you right-click, Save As, and I'm just going to override the previous table. And this means that from now on, whenever I get in to create a new bill of material on a new drawing, I click on the drawing view, I hit my S key, and if you have any questions about this, we can definitely cover this in how you put them on your S key. And now when I hit the green check mark, bang, it's there. That's the format that I have chosen. That's what I want to see. So if you are inserting bill of materials on a regular basis, you need to do this, so you don't have to go in and change them all the time. To choose where it look for your bill of materials, that is an option. If you go into Options, go into File Locations, and in here you will find your BOM templates, and you will actually see that I put two. I put one that is where I normally keep my bill of material templates, and then I just create the one I put on the desktop. So that's why it's looking out of the desktop right now. So I definitely think that if you are inserting bill of materials on a regular basis, then you need to go in and really save those templates out. Okay, so again, you set it up the way you want it, and then you right click and you say save as. And that's really a way that you can do that. That's the same place we can insert rows and things like that. Another thing we can do when we're in here that some people sometimes call and ask us about is actually inserting items into the bill of material that do not really appear in the assembly. That could be like grease or something like that. You can also right click down here and say that you want to insert a row below, and now I can insert my own row down here, and I could now go in here and type, grease, and insert, some kind of a value over here, and I can overwrite what's in the cell, so I can actually show something extra in here. So that's another little tip. Another thing that some of our customers do for that is actually insert it as a virtual component. And if you don't know what a virtual component is, that is when we insert a part inside of an assembly without starting from inside the assembly. The way you can do that is if I go in here and I say insert a new part, and this is just going to insert a new part inside my assembly. There is nothing inside this part. And now again, I can right click, I can rename it, and I could call that grease 1. And that will now, that is nothing in the part, but when we go in and look at our bill of material, that will actually show up as another object. In this case, of course, it becomes 1, but again, we can actually go in here and we can overwrite these values here and call it whatever we want in there. So, you can definitely get things set up really the way you want it in here. And like I said, I'm a big favor of saving these templates out and created my own, so the next time I don't really have to waste much time inserting them again. So I think this is pretty cool. I think that it's pretty cool how SolidWorks really gives you the options to go in here and set this up and change these kind of things. Now, there's also something more about making it look right, or making it appear the way that we want it to look. So just a couple of kind of like furthermore about that. So not only, as we saw before, when we go into the options in here, we can show it as parts only or indented only. But of course, we can also go in and start changing things like the column width. So maybe you want to give it a good border around the part, make it look kind of nice in here, so you can change the appearances. We can, of course, also, if you click inside of a column here, you will see that we get different up here that we can actually choose how do we want to display the things in here. We can, of course, also go in and change things like color and stuff like that if you want different things to display in different colors. And actually, one of my things, too, that I'd like to point out is layers. So a lot of us are coming from a 2D background, such as AutoCAD, and well, we used a lot of layers, and then we got into SolidWorks, and we kind of like, I don't know, forgot about it, or just maybe didn't feel a need about it. Maybe you do kind of feel a need about it on drawings. One of the easiest ways is just go up to the search tool up here and start searching layers. And in here is the layer property, and it's really easy to use, right? So I can go in here, create my BOM layer, and maybe I'm going to change the color and make it red. Right, so now I've just created a red BOM layer, and guess what? Now that BOM can actually sit on its own layer. How neat is that? I have a feeling that some people is going to find a use for having different layers in there, especially for their bill of materials. Now that comes to another thing, and that is options with the bill of materials. Because if we go into the options here, and there's the system options and the document properties, right? Document properties goes back to the specific file we have open here. There is tables in here. And in here, if you go to the bill of material, you can actually choose by default that it always starts out on that BOM layer that you've created. So now you never have to worry about it again. It's on the right layer. Cool. Of course, we can also change things over here with the different options, the settings. Go further down, change the fonts. Now here is some things about how do we want things to appear in our bill of materials. So this is an interesting thing. We can actually choose in our bill of materials to show different configurations. So I have a lot of different configurations in here, and I'm going to come back and cover this a little bit more in depth. But if I choose to show two bill of materials in a row, you will actually see that I see the design chains configuration and the default that we've been working with configurations. And we will see here that there is a couple of them that those two items don't exist in the design chains. This assembly, because it's actually replaced by this assembly down here. So this is where in the document properties, SolidWorks is looking to talk about how do you want that to display. Do you want it to show as zeros instead? And then it would actually to show as zeros, or how do you want that to apply in there? There is also, go back in here again, under the build. So it's under document properties, tables, bill of materials. There's also down here, do you want to add the quantity next to the configuration? So if you had, like I had before, two columns, do you really need the quantity in that? Small things you can check in here. Also, again, this is many times standards for each company. What do you want to show? Leading, trailing, zeros, stuff like that. This is all stuff that we can play around with. Now, the other one you saw that I actually had turned on by mistake is there is one system property in here, the system options. And if you click on drawings, down here, you can actually choose by default to always overwrite the default quantity with something else. That was what I had forgotten to turn off when I was playing around with things. But in here, we could we could write something, and it's now going to change when we insert a new bill of material. And that's actually one of the advices with SolidWorks. Many times when you change things around in these settings, just insert a new one. You will see that have now been changed. So again, some neat things, what you can do there. Another thing you can do that I want to show with appearances is if I turn this into parts, we see that this list becomes very long. So not only could we insert rows below, but we can actually also split this one. So if it gets a little long, this bill of material, we can right-click and we can hit split. And now I actually end up with kind of like two. So now maybe that looks a little bit better on my drawing here, and I can kind of like make it look a little bit better here too. So that's one of my other things that I think is a good thing to know that that you can create in here. All right. So some neat stuff here. Let's get rid of these. Where are we at here? So I think that you have a lot of tools to get it look pretty close to what you want here. But just to take it kind of like maybe wrap this up with some other, maybe a little bit more advanced stuff, or maybe some of the things, the special requests you get, stuff like that. If I go in here, we can actually drive things on our table. This is something that we get requested on a regular basis. So if I go in here and I open up this little sub-assembly here, and sometimes people want certain dimensions to show up on their bill of materials. not on the drawing, but actually inside the bill of materials. So let me just open up a sketch here on this one. I'm going to go normal 2, and I'm just going to create a box here, and maybe I choose to just attach this one, right? So it's kind of like associated with our part here, so if anything changes, then we are kind of like cool with that. Make that tangent. And now we could actually, well, let's add a couple of dimensions here. Leave this one here. And take this dimension and place this one. Okay, so this is just a couple of reference here. Oh, and I'm in metric. Of course I'm in metric. Change that to inches. Thank you. So luckily here, this is actually, well, this is not a square. This 3.34 and 0.86. So how can I display this maybe on a bill of material? I can actually go in here and create a custom property. And in this custom property here, I'm going to call this my measure. And I could actually go in here and select, maybe I want to do height. You see how that displays right there? I'm going to make a space and an X, and then select my second one. So now I have these 2 dimensions showing up here. Now, if I go in and actually, let me just hide that sketch. If I now go in here and make a drawing from this, sure, whatever. And we always need a view, so we're going to drag this view in here. That's fine. Let's make a bill of material, whatever. Right, so we get this bill of material. What we can do now is we could actually go in here and create a row or a measurement column or something like that, and go in here and say I want to make a column below here, and I'm going to go in and double click in this field. And then I'm going to say I'm going to link this back to, well, actually in this field here I'll probably write something. Measure. And then over in this field, double click so you get the cursor. I'm going to say link to custom property. Now in here in custom properties, we always, my rule, model and view, specified sheet properties. But now in here, it would actually show the measure icon, and it will bring that measurement in. And that there is following, it's reading the custom properties, what means that whenever it changes, if this size changes, then this is updating. So I think that's a pretty neat format, right? Let's get back to our main assembly over here. Another thing I want to show is that if I go in here, create another bill of material, and we're going to do this one part. Sometimes, oh, now it's all red because I'm a bill of material. Sometimes you maybe want to move these to another sheet, right? If you didn't know, you can do that. So if I create another sheet number 6 here, you can actually just take this and just drag it down and place it over to view 6, and now it's actually sitting on that. So that's kind of nice if you have a huge assembly. Also, there's some other tools in here. So I definitely recommend you to right click in here and go through some of the different ones in here. There's actually also a sort command in here that can be kind of handy. These different sort options in here where you can sort by part number, by item number, and stuff like that. But you actually also have these 3 arrows over here that give you some more tools. So now you get a little icon up here that actually gives you a nice little preview what can be kind of nice. You actually see that this is a virtual part. That was our grease we added, right? Because that shows up in here. Now, if we go into the indented and we do my favorite, the detail numbering, there's a couple of things we can do with these 3 arrows showing up here, a couple of neat tricks. If you go in here and we, for example, go back and look at our grinding wheel assembly. So here was the grinding wheel, right? Hello, hello. We have two of those. But notice that since this is a sub-assembly, it actually only shows one of each item in here. So it shows that we need two of this sub-assembly called grinding wheels, but the grinding wheel actually only shows one. Now we can argue, that makes sense because we only need one of each of the sub-assemblies. But some people say, well, hey, I actually need to show what that actual number is. And this can also happen for if you do a lot of weldments, this can happen here where SolidWorks don't really calculate that bill of material for you. If you right-click in here, you actually get some other options. And one of them in here is combine identical components. And if I select that one, SolidWorks kind of like forgets about the sub-assembly here, but goes in and kind of like finds all identical components. So when I hit that, you will see that it now actually does display that right amount it needs in here. And it will show that with a little icon over here that it now is actually showing everything that is true to our model. Another thing you can do in here, you can actually also, if you right click on it, you can actually also dissolve that sub-assembly and just show it as parts. And it throws it down at the bottom in here, and now you will also show it as the right amount. Even if we had not combined identical, it will show it right here. So I showed before for the bill of materials how we could show them as parts only. Well, we can actually, with the indented, we can actually show both, because we can actually always go in to the sub-assembly in here and right-click and dissolve it in here. So that's a neat thing. Another thing we can do in here, as you can see, if we right-click, is we can actually also exclude from bill of materials. So that can be kind of nice, that we can actually delete things out of, if we don't want to show it in the template or in the bill of material. That is another thing we can do in here. We can just hide the components out. If we want to show them again, we can go over, find it in our tree, and we can show them again. You can actually also reorder things by grabbing and moving things. You can reorder things in your tree if you do not know that. And another thing you can do in here that is kind of neat with these three arrows, by the way, you can just turn them on and off by hitting this little fly out here. That's like the same thing you do to a property manager over here. But another thing you can do is if you right click here, you can actually go into a component options. Check this out. If I do that, now I can actually choose what I want to use in here. I can use the document name as my appearance. So now this is going to be the document name if I hit the green check mark, right? Or I can actually also go in here and do a user-specific name or a configuration name in here. So that's really, really powerful too. So be aware of that inside of the bill of material that you have a lot of extra options in here. So a lot of things, I hope I showed a lot of things. I hope I didn't jump too much around and it became too confusing. I was kind of like trying to start out a little slow and then work our way in there. Now the two last things I'm going to end out with showing is what I call kind of like, if you want to jump into this advanced, kind of like a couple of things to know about it. And that is that when you create a bill of material, there's configuration. So I showed that before, that you have your top level where you can actually pick what of your configurations you want to show. If you go to parts, you can specify what configuration of the parts you want to show, but then you actually get multiple in here. And maybe checking out the help, maybe it's a little bit better to go into depth of these, but pretty much you can display one as one. So that means if you have a column in your bill of material where you're showing two different configurations, how do you want it to deal with part numbers? If one is called wheel, but there's a configuration A, a configuration B, configuration C, in that configuration, and then in another configuration you also have a part named wheel, with also other broken down under configurations. This is getting a little complex. Definitely something to play with if you do work a lot with bill of materials. It's not necessarily that overly complicated, but I almost think that you need to bury in there. I will also say that before I jump in to the next thing is when you are inside of creating your configurations inside of in here. When you create configurations inside of SolidWorks, there is actually a section in there for how it should show on bill of materials. Not too long ago, I remember I had a case where somebody was telling me that their sub-assembly didn't show up on their bill of material, and that was in here. So crisscrossing back and forth between in the drawings the bill of material, but also be aware of if you are working with configurations, that in here under the configurations there's also control aspects for how that appear on your bill of material. This gets a little, deep. The last thing I also want to show, and this is really for our professional premium users, is that if you go into your toolbox, if you have toolbox, and you go into your toolbox here, mine is in my vault, just open it up here, be aware of that under your user-defined settings in here, you can actually show other things in the bill of materials, such as part numbers and descriptions. This is actually coming out of if you start modifying your toolbox parts, and in here you can put custom data into part number description that you can actually choose how you display that on the bill of material too. Now, of course, as soon as we go into toolbox, now we just got to make sure that you update it for previous years, you save a backup copy so you don't have to start over every new version of SolidWorks. So I really hope that that through this this lunch and learn here that you got a little bit better understanding on what you can do with bill of materials. I know that there was a lot. This one here recording is being recorded, and I'm going to make it available up in it's going to be on our website. So if you want to, email me, I will definitely make sure that you do get all those different options so you can watch the video. And if you want my PowerPoint too, for sure, but I didn't really put much emphasis into that. So to wrap it up, well, I think BOMs are really, really powerful. I think that they're easy to use. Maybe go through and kind of like play around with it a little bit. You can really customize them. You can set things up. Don't forget you can save back those templates, and then you really have a chance to make them look pretty cool, I think, move into different sheets and stuff like that. And in the end, you can actually drive things, customize things with the custom properties and stuff like that. So I think the bill of materials in SolidWorks are very powerful. I know that a lot of customers have some really specific requests to it, and SolidWorks definitely listens and put those enhancement requests in for anything that you need to, of other things you want to see in there. All right, I've talked about for 50 minutes here, and I don't want to take more up of your lunch. Thank you for all of you guys who sat through this. I was a little bit afraid with this topic that it did become a little confusing because I jumped around a lot. I hope that I was trying to keep kind of like a line through it. You have my email there on the screen, lars@catdimensions.com. Please email me any questions, any comments. I love your feedback, even if it's, besides the weird accent, I can't really, I can't do much about, but all the other stuff, please, I love to get your criticism. And of course, I'm going to be hanging around here. If you have any questions or anything like that, type them in the column. I can see that there's already some in there, and definitely be more than happy to go through and look at some of these. So again, everybody, I really thank you guys for attending this. I hope it was helpful. It is recorded. It will get up on our website, on our YouTube channel, and all that cool stuff. Everybody, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Have a great, great day.